So the judge in the Amy Burke versus Workplace Relations Commission judicial review case has issued her decision today, Monday the 26th of June 2023. I will put a link to the actual decision underneath the video on my YouTube channel. So if you want to read the full decision, it's 10 pages long. It's issued by the judge, Miss Justice Marguerite Bulger, and today, as I say, is the 23rd of June. In conclusion, the judge has said that the applicant engaged, Miss Amy Burke, engaged in a blatant abuse of the court process, which rendered it impossible to continue with the hearing of her case, in spite of the court having afforded the applicant time to reflect on her behaviour and the consequences of it. As a result, the court was compelled to grant the respondents and notice parties applications to dismiss her claim in the exercise of its inherent jurisdiction. There was no alternative option identified to or available to the court that would have enabled the hearing to continue. That is the judicial review application in the High Court by Amy Burke, with the adjudication officer and the Workplace Relations Commission as respondents, and Arthur Cox Solicitors as a notice party. And Arthur Cox Solicitors is the firm who did employ Miss Amy Burke as a solicitor for some time, and which gave rise then to a dismissal, an unfair dismissal claim at the WRC, and then this judicial review application. Miss Justice Marguerite Bulger has set out her reasonings for dismissing the case last May, which was in last May. Basically, Solicitor Amy Burke's behaviour in court during her challenge to the rejection of her unfair dismissal claim was described by the judge as extraordinarily unusual and unprecedented. Miss Justice Marguerite Bulger said she was satisfied the court had power to dismiss the case on the grounds of the applicant's conduct. She said a person's obligation to respect the court and its processes go hand in hand with their rights to litigate and their rights to fair procedures. Corporate bodies such as the WRC, notice party firm Arthur Cox law firm, they have a right to a fair hearing too. Where the conduct or the court finds an applicant's conduct is an abusive process, the court has jurisdiction to dismiss the proceedings. The judge said that Miss Burke engaged in a blatant abuse of the court process that rendered it impossible to continue hearing the case. Last May, you might remember, I did a video around about the time, but the court and the lawyers had a difficult time trying to hear and be heard over Miss Burke's loud chanting. The judge dismissed her challenge to the WRC's rejection of her claim of unfair dismissal from Arthur Cox. By way of background, Miss Burke was dismissed from Arthur Cox. She brought a claim to the WRC. The adjudication officer in the WRC threw the case out because he found that he was unable to conduct the hearing due to what he claimed was the disruptive behaviour of Miss Burke and her mother. The hearing of Miss Burke's judicial review came to an abrupt halt during its third day, as Miss Burke repeatedly, in a loud, raised voice, expressed her discontent that Miss Justice Bulger had supplied copies of case law that had been cited in submissions by the WRC and Arthur Cox. She accused the judge of litigating the case on behalf of Arthur Cox and the WRC. Arthur Cox Senior Counsel Peter Ward said that Miss Burke was deliberately and consciously obstructing the administration of justice, and she was showing precisely the behaviour that the WRC's adjudication officer was subjected to by Miss Burke and her mother for an entire day during the hearing of the unfair dismissal claim in April 2022. The WRC's senior counsel agreed with the application of Mr Ward for the case to be dismissed. Miss Justice Bulger said that the hearing last May, the judicial review application brought by Miss Burke, was descending into chaos due to the applicant's extraordinary behaviour. She spoke about a scripted mantra of objections to a decision that had already been made, and her conduct was, quote, devoid of any attempts at persuasion and appeared to be designed solely to collapse the hearing before the court. It could not be objectively viewed as having any other purpose or outcome, and this, said the judge, has to be the very definition of an abuse of the court's process. There was no justification for Miss Burke's behaviour. The court was compelled to grant the application by Arthur Cox and the WRC to dismiss her claim. The judge said that there was no alternative option identified or available to the court which would have enabled the hearing to continue. Miss Justice Bulger, the judge, in the judicial review application, said that Miss Burke had earlier during her own submissions made various baseless claims and repeatedly objected to what she described as interruptions from the court. These interruptions from the court included the judge's queries about what document Miss Burke was reading from. Throughout the hearing, the judge had to leave the courtroom due to Miss Burke speaking loudly over her and or other lawyers, in spite of frequent requests to her not to do so. There was also a pattern of refusing to accept the court's decisions, the judge added. The High Court Judicial Review was brought over a WRC adjudication officer's rejection of Miss Burke's complaint that she was unfairly dismissed from Arthur Cox in November 2019. The officer said he inquired into her claim, but the hearing could not continue due to persistent interruptions from the Burke family. Miss Burke claimed she had an unblemished record during her time at the law firm from May 2016 until she was fired without warning in November 2019. I will put a link to the case itself, the decision by Miss Justice Marguerite Bulger, underneath this video on my YouTube channel. I hope you find this video useful and instructive, and I would appreciate if you gave it the thumbs up down below. Thanks a lot.